I'm in 2 Kings chapter 17. We're once again looking at the kings of Israel and Judah. This time I'm looking at Hoshea, the son of Elah. And he is a wicked king. And he's the last king for the kingdom of Israel. Still going to have kings of Judah. But Hoshea is the last king of Israel. They're about to be carried away into captivity. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he's the last one before they're taken into captivity. And so he's king for 9 years. And 9 in the Bible is the number for fruitfulness. He was very fruitful, but in an evil way. He had evil fruit. He's an evil worker. There's a lot of people, they do have a lot of fruit, but it's all evil fruit. They've done a lot of stuff, but it's all evil stuff. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Almost looks like it's somewhat of a compliment towards him. I mean, he still did evil, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Possibly, this could be meaning he was not as bad, but at the same time, there's different kinds of evil. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Maybe he was just as wicked, but just in a different way. For example, there's all kinds of different sins people get involved in. Somebody may have a lifestyle of just being an habitual fornicator and just going out sleeping with everybody that they see. And that's evil. That's an evil lifestyle. While you got a guy over here, he is just living his life being ugly to people, mean to people, full of pride, and cheating people, and everything else. He's still doing evil, just not as the other guy's doing it. Two different kinds of evil. There's more than one kind of evil in the Bible. There's more than one kind of evil that you're going to see in people. This guy did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Just because you're not doing the sin that your neighbor's doing, you can't just look at him and say that you're good and he's evil because he's committing a sin that you're not. Get your own sins worked out. We've all got stuff we need to work on. We've all got some stuff in us that's evil that we need to get fixed. And Hoshea, he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. There's different kinds of evil. So, he either wasn't as wicked or was just a different types of evil. Not all sins are the same. You know, in Matthew 23:14, the Lord, speaking to the Pharisees, he says they're going to receive a greater damnation. And that shows you that not all sin is equal. That shows you that some people are worse than others. Maybe it is speaking in the sense that Hoshea just wasn't as bad as the other kings, but, you know, the damage had already been done from the other kings, and he's kind of just the icing on the cake. Maybe he's just the sprinkles on the cake that's making that cake to be just finished, and the Lord's ready to just cut into it. So it says, against him came up Shalmaneser, this king Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. That's a big no-no. He gave presents and served the king of Assyria to appease him. Instead of turning to the Lord and saying, you know, this guy, he's coming up against me, and I want you to help me. He is going to become his servant and give him presents. And you can become a servant to sin. You can become a servant to the flesh and the devil, the world. And you're going to do everything it takes to appease this flesh that attacks you every morning. You get up in the morning and you got this urge to just do wicked stuff. And when you give into it, you're saying, hey, flesh, here's a present. Take this present. Or the devil comes and tempts you, because the Bible says he's your adversary. The devil's going to come tempt you. You give in to him. You're like, okay, here's a present. And now over time, the more you give into the sin, the more you give into the flesh, the world, and the devil, you become their servant. You know, Joshua said in Joshua 24:15, choose you this day who you're gonna serve. He said, as for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. You can become a servant to everything but the Lord when you continue just giving presents to the flesh, the world, and the devil, like Hosea did. He should have just went to the Lord and said, this king's on me, get him off me. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea. See, Hosea was given Shalmaneser presents, but then the king of Assyria, Shalmaneser, finds conspiracy in Hosea. He's seeing some dishonesty in there. He thinks Hosea's trying to pull one over on him, because for he had sent messengers to So, it's the guy's name, So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. You see, he quit sending them presents over to Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria. And he's wondering what's going on. All of a sudden those presents stop, and then he's hearing through Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, all that this guy's sending messengers to So, king of Egypt. So he's thinking, well, this guy, he's about to get an alliance to go against me or something. So he gets him, puts him in prison, shuts him up, bonds him in prison. And that's what serving the flesh, the world, and the devil will do. It'll shut you up and put you in prison. You think that you're free, but you're not free. When you're doing all that stuff, you're just putting yourself in bondage. You're going to end up with way less freedom than you would have had you served the Lord. Way less freedom. The devil would love to bind you in a prison. You know why? Because that's where he's going. In the millennium, he's going to go to the bottomless pit. In eternity, he's going to a lake of fire, and he knows it, and he wants to put you in prison. And Shalmaneser put Hosea in prison. He had a loss of all freedom there. When the world finds conspiracy in you, they take action. You see, for example, you know, the world's always doing wicked stuff. And it seems just like they're getting by with it most times. But the moment they find somebody of God doing something, maybe trying to keep it secret, they'll put it all out there in the open. They call you out on it. When the world finds conspiracy in somebody like a pastor or a preacher, they'll put it all over the media, the internet, everything, to try to ruin that person. Once they find conspiracy in you, make sure that the only thing that they find in you is goodness and holiness. That way you've got nothing to worry about. Don't be having no secret sin behind closed doors that if they find out, they can just ruin your testimony, ruin your ministry. Because they will air you out if they find conspiracy. And the devil wants to shut you up and bind you in prison. It says, then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. So he's going all throughout the land, wreaking havoc. He besieged it. That means he surrounded. He beset it with troops. He's going throughout all the land. What does the devil do? Job 1:7. The Lord asked him, where'd you come from? He said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down in it. Just like the king of Assyria, he came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. He's a roaring lion, walking about, seeking whom he may devour. And in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. So he came through, they got carried away. You see, the devil wants to take you captive. It talks about in 2 Timothy 2:26 that there are people who are taken captive by him at his will. Sin takes you to a place that you don't want to be. That's the state that Israel's in. They're in a place that they don't want to be. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria. They got carried away with their sin, and now they're getting carried away because of their sin. And placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. Sin takes you to a place that you don't want to go. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. And what did the Lord say? Exodus 34:14, don't have no other God before me. What did Paul say? 1 Thessalonians 1:9, turn to God from idols. He said, how you turn to God from idols to serve the living and the true God. Israel ain't doing that. They feared other gods. You see, the Lord had brought them out of bondage. He brought them up out of the land of Egypt. Now look what happened. Hoshea, he went right back in it. The Lord brought him out of bondage. The devil put you right back in it. Why do you want to go back into bondage? Serve God and it's freedom. Serve the devil, it's bondage. And walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. They walked in the statutes of the heathen. Evil communication corrupts good manners. They started acting just like them, just like the heathen. They walked in. Look at that. They walked in it. Walked in the statutes of the heathen. Don't be conformed to this world. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. As it talks about in Romans 12:2. Walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Galatians 5:16. Don't walk in the statutes of the heathen. See, the Lord's already defeated this world and this death, this culture of death that you see. They are cast out from before you, and the devil is soon to be as well. Revelation 20:10. He's going to be cast into the lake of fire where the beast and the false prophet are going to be. You see, they walked in the statutes of the heathen whom the Lord had already cast out. Why would you walk in the statutes of somebody who's been cast out? And you see the future of this world. It's going to be cast out. The devil's going to be cast out. The Antichrist, the false prophet, the wicked men are going to be cast into a lake of fire, which is the second death. Why walk in their statutes? Why do what they're doing? It's just going to mess you up. And the children of Israel, look at this, did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. You see that? They did secretly. And what does the Bible say? In Psalm 90 and verse 8, the secret sins are in the light of thy countenance. The Lord sees it. It says it in Psalms 90 and verse 8. Nothing is going unseen. You see, they were cheating on the Lord, and he saw it. He didn't have to hire a private investigator to see them cheating on him in the high places. He's seen it. He's seen them playing the whore, as the Bible calls it. He sees you playing the whore on the Lord, on the Bible. Don't do secretly those things that are not right against the Lord. You may be hiding it from your wife, your kids, your family, your friends, but the Lord sees it. And they built high places. They weren't supposed to be worshiping in the high places. God told them not to. Even if they were worshiping him in the high places, they weren't supposed to. They had a certain place that they were supposed to worship. From the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. Look at that, the tower of the watchman. You know it's getting bad when your watchman is an idolater himself. He's not very vigilant when your watchman is an idolater. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. They let the devil right in. They gave place to the devil. And they set them up images and groves. What's this word all about today? Images. Moving images. What do they do all day? Scroll TikTok. See all those moving images. Mostly virtual strip teases is all that is. When you get on TikTok and make videos of yourself half naked, you're just being a virtual stripper, getting close to being just a virtual whore or something. And you're setting up images, making these images for people to sin by, for people to look up on you and lust. They set up images and groves. They get in these groves, these groups of trees. That way they can do wicked stuff back there, and they think that they're hidden in them groves. In every high hill and under every green tree. They love under them green trees, like I said, because he says in Hosea, the shadow thereof is good in them trees. And images are in groves, and you can make images out of what is in a grove. You see, they would go to these groves and worship the images, and then you can cut down some of the grove and make images out of it. And that's what they were experts on doing, making them little gods. And they worship them under every green tree, as it talks about in Hosea 4:13, because the shadow thereof is good, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil. Most things that men worship today had to be set up. They set up images. Think about it. Most of the stuff you worship today, and all these things aren't bad, but you had to set up your cable. You had to set up your iPhone. You had to set up your game system. Now, I'm not saying all these things are bad, but people's mostly using them for bad. I'm using an iPhone right now to record this lesson. But, most people setting up their iPhone for bad stuff, to do bad stuff on it. They set up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree, and they burn incense in all the high places, as did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. Look at that. As did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them. If they saw the heathen getting in trouble with God for doing this same stuff, why in the world would they want to go and do this same stuff? It doesn't make any sense. Learn from other people's mistakes. You got to learn from the experience of others. Israel should have learned from seeing the mistakes of others, and they provoked the Lord to anger. How would you feel if you found out that you provoked the Lord to anger? You see, the cup of his wrath gets full. Genesis 15:16, it says, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. You see, you got a cup, and the more you sin, the more wrath of God goes in that cup. It gets full. He just pours it out on you. And you see, all the things of the heathen were to be destroyed. They made their own. They made their own stuff just like the heathen. For they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. He told them, Leviticus 19:4, 26:1, don't serve idols. Don't serve these images. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. So the Lord himself, the judge of all the earth, testified against Israel. You're in rough shape when the Lord is testifying against you. He's the judge of all the earth. Now, me and you have an advocate with the Father. We're in good shape in that sense. Israel, though, he testified against them. You see, turn ye from your evil ways, he says. What did Paul say in 1 Thessalonians 1:9? He saw how they had turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God. Maybe you got idolatry in your life right now. Well, turn to God from those idols. Ditch the wicked ways that they got. Turn from your evil ways. That's what they need to do. Proverbs 13:15 talks about how it says, good understanding giveth favor, but the way of transgressors is hard. Keep my commandments and my statutes. Proverbs 4:4 talks about keep my commandments and live. Keeping the Lord's commandments, you're just adding time to your life. According to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets were the mailmen. And they rejected what the prophets said. And we got mailmen today. Ephesians 4:11 through 14 talks about our mailmen. He gave some evangelists, some pastors and teachers for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. And most people reject the true Bible-believing pastors and teachers and evangelists today that are sent to them by the Lord himself to testify against the things that they're doing. And they reject it, just as Israel did. They stay in rebellion. And this is verse 13. 13 is the number of rebellion. They're in their evil ways. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in the Lord their God. They wouldn't hear the prophets. They wouldn't hear of it. Jesus said, if any man have ears to hear, let him hear. They had their ears full of earbuds with the latest filthy Sam Smith song in it. They hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers. Proverbs 29:1 talks about, he that is often reproved and hardens his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. And they're about to be destroyed. They made their neck like to the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in the Lord their God, and without faith, Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it's impossible to please God. They had no faith in God. Their faith was in getting help from other men, getting help from the idols, the gods. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he had made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do this thing. So they're like their fathers who came out of Egypt and turned their back on God. They would not hear. And it is so hard to get men to listen to what you're saying. I found that anytime I try to talk to somebody about the Bible, there is so much on their mind. There's so much going on around them. Somebody will always come in, start talking to them, interrupt me, distract them. There's so many distractions. You can see maybe they're listening to you for a few seconds, and then you can see their mind. You can see the look on their face when their mind just drifts off and they're no longer listening to you. There's always something in the background. This world is noisy. And there's always something in the background causing them not to be able to hear. And they don't hear. They will not hear you. They do not open their ears. And they're on this path of not believing. The path of not believing is damnation. And it's amazing, though, that God makes covenants with men. They reject them, though. They rejected his statutes and his covenant that he had made with their fathers. It's unfathomable, if that's a word, how man refuses to be reasoned with. You can't figure it out how a man, a small, insignificant man, is being approached by God, and God's trying to reason with him, and you can't fathom how he just rejects his statutes and how he rejects the things that the Lord says. He refuses to be reasoned with. In Isaiah 1:18, the Lord says, "Come now, let us reason together. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." But man won't be reasoned with. They reject his testimonies. And if they followed the example of King David, they would have kept his testimonies. Psalms 119:99 shows you David loved the Lord's testimonies. But these people, they reject them. They became vain. You see, the lost only have hope in the vain things of this life. And if in this life only we have hope, we are of all men most miserable. In 1 Thessalonians 4:13, it says, "We are not as them which have no hope." The people in this world, they have no hope. They're without hope and without God in the world. But you have a hope, the Lord Jesus Christ. So don't become vain. You become vain, you putting all your hope in this life down here. And just like in Romans 1:21, they became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. They reject his statutes, start making their own statutes. Statutes are laws expressed in a document, testimony, that's evidence to support facts. And they reject all that stuff that was given to them by the Lord. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. That's a mouthful of all the wickedness they done. They rejected the commandments, the orders given with authority. They left them all. They put them on the shelf, just like the world. And many Christians, even today, when they leave home, they leave the Bible on the shelf. They don't touch it. They may go to church every time the doors are open. They leave the Bible in the car. They leave all the commandments of the Lord their God. They make them something else that they like to look at. They made them molten images. Even 2 calves. They was worshiping those calves. It all started with Jeroboam. He made them calves, made his own religion. It caught on, and he just destroyed the kingdom of Israel and made a grove, a big group of trees where they could worship under some shadows, and worshipped all the host of heaven. They looked up at the stars, the sun, and began to worship that stuff. See, men leave God behind, but he never leaves the saints. Hebrews 13:5, He says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. But these molten images, that's a god made from melted objects. Like in Exodus 32, Aaron had them give them all their golden earrings and stuff, and he melted it down and formed it into some type of golden calf. And they worship all the host of heaven, the sun, the moon, the stars. They looked up there, they made gods out of that stuff. And Baal, that's an image himself. And you see a lot of these, like Baal, Moloch, stuff like that. What you had was at one point the fallen angels had come down, and when they went away, they made images to look like them. So they were still worshiping them. But they sacrificed to Baal and these wicked false gods. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. They caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire. That is child sacrifice. And the Lord warned them against that in verses like Leviticus 18:21, Deuteronomy 18:10, Ezekiel 16:21, Ezekiel 20:31, Ezekiel 23:37. Obviously, the Lord doesn't want you to sacrifice your son and daughters to a false god. He talks about how that never even came into his mind. He never wanted you to sacrifice your sons and daughters. The Lord doesn't require human sacrifice. The Lord came down and became a sacrifice for you. That's just the devil that requires a human sacrifice. They sold themselves, and they're not selling themselves to God, so they had to have been selling themselves to the devil. And obviously, the devil probably didn't come to them with a contract and a pen telling them to sign their soul over. But they came to a crossroads where they said, I'm going to serve the devil. And in their mind, they signed themselves over to him. Just like 1 Kings 21:20, Elijah said to Ahab, Thou hast sold thyself to work evil on the side of the Lord. And it provokes God to anger. They got the wrath of God on them. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. And there was none left but the tribe of Judah only. And the thing about it is, the tribe of Judah was doing the same stuff, but they were being preserved for David's sake. For King David's sake. If it wasn't for King David, he would have wiped them out sooner. I mean, they're going to be put into captivity later as well. But therefore the Lord was angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. You see, they used divination, made their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, used enchantments. Those are those forbidden practices that they picked up from the heathen that God forbid them to do in Deuteronomy 18. Also, Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the statutes of Israel, which they had made. See, they did the same thing. And you would think that they would see it's not working out for them, but they did it anyway. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, men that would come take everything, until he had cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. That's that guy that made his own religion back there. Jeroboam the son of Nebat made his own religion to combat against the pure religion. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord, and made them sin a great sin. And not all sins the same. See, David himself was a sinner. I mean, he murdered a man and committed adultery. It was nothing like the sin of Jeroboam, though, that made Israel sin a great sin. David is the standard for good kings, and all the bad kings are compared to Jeroboam. For the children of Israel walked in the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them. And you see, you leave a spiritual footprints, and your children will place their feet in those footprints that you left, and they won't depart from that stuff. Most times. You're making a wicked highway for your family to travel. But you need to depart from evil, because you don't want them to follow those footsteps. They're just going to follow your footsteps. Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants the prophets, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. What you're seeing is Israel going into captivity. You see, don't get carried away. You get carried away with your sin, the devil is going to carry you away. Playing with idols, you're going to get carried away. And he removes Israel. And that's much worse than getting removed from somebody's friends list because they don't like you because of your stand on the Bible or something. God removed them. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. They took Israel out of their own home there and put other people in it. See that? The king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from all these other places and put them in Samaria and took Israel out of it. That's how they're taken over. You see that? And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord, even the people coming. They obviously didn't fear the Lord. Israel, that was there before, didn't fear the Lord. But they feared not the Lord, therefore the Lord sent lions among them which slew some of them. They'd just be out, doing, eating, drinking, being merry. All of a sudden a lion just comes, eats them up. That pictures the roaring lion walking about seeking whom he may devour. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them. And behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the God of the land. So they're telling the king, they're like, they don't know the people you've placed there from these other nations. They don't know the God of the land. Notice that. They think that certain lands have certain gods. They don't see it as just one true God. They think certain lands have certain gods, and the people that they brought to this land didn't have the right God for that land. And they recognize something's going on, but they don't have enough sense to know what's going on. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests whom you brought from thence. And, this isn't much help, because the priests, these are the priests of Israel. They're like the priest Jeroboam set up. He ordained priests for the devils and for the idols and the calves which he made. The priests were wicked. They're not going to be much help. But he brings them priests back over. Let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. And that's what you have today, a bunch of wicked pastors, a bunch of wicked teachers, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron. And they're teaching people how you can have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. They're teaching them how you can appear to be righteous on the outside and just continue to do what you want to do. They're teaching them how you can serve God and serve the devil at the same time. But unfortunately, the priests, they didn't have any real spiritual sense themselves. Some priests are evil. Just read about it in 2 Chronicles 11:15. You got priests for the devils. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, Carry thither one of the priests whom you brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. Oh yeah, like they can help you, like they know so much about him. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. I'm sure he taught them right. You know, the priests may say one thing and do another. Also consider that. They may say one thing and do another thing. Howbeit every nation made gods of their own. You see that? Didn't teach them too well. And put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made. Every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. They made them gods, and there was already the houses of the high places, which the Samaritans themselves had made. They had already, they had paved a way for them to be wicked when they came in. They followed the example of Israel, who was there before them, by putting their gods in the houses of the high places that was already there, ready for them. And many Christians today are just paving the way for the lost people to be more wicked in many ways. I mean, they look to you and expect something out of you, and you're acting just like they are. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. And what you have, this is all these gods that they're making. So the people of these nations brought their own false gods into the land, like Succoth-Benoth, and you look that guy up, he looks like a hen and her chicks, and it's just weird stuff. Nergal, you look up Nergal, he looks like a rooster. Then this Ashima, the men of Hamath made Ashima, and Ashima looks like a goat. Nibhaz looks like a dog with a man's body. Tartak looks like a donkey with a man's body. Adramelech has a human torso and a mule's head and a peacock's tail. You look up Anamelech, that's like the female goddess version of Adramelech. And Adramelech and Anamelech, they like child sacrifice. And you see, men worship and serve the creature more than the creator. This right here, having these gods with all this animal characteristics, that pictures how men today, they love an animal more than they love a person. They'll worship and serve these creatures. So they feared the Lord, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They made the priests for the devils, just like King Jeroboam did. They feared the Lord, though, right? You see, he's using sarcasm here. Maybe they have maybe they look good outwardly like the Pharisees. They're not right with God, though. Many people, they say pious things. Sounds like they fear the Lord. They really don't. They feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried out from thence. Unto this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. See, Jacob, he changed his name to Israel in Genesis 32:28. And with whom the Lord had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, Ye shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. That's Exodus 20:4-5. But they did after the former manner. They haven't learned from the mistakes of the past. They fear not the Lord. So verse 33, most likely, just a profession they have. It says they fear not the Lord, but yet they feared the Lord. You can have a profession, but you need to back up your words. You know, there's many Christians who are born again. They knew they were a sinner, and they're saved and they're going to heaven, but they don't fear God. They feared the Lord, yet they fear not the Lord. With whom the Lord made a covenant and charged them, saying, You shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with a great power and a stretched out arm, him shall you fear, and him shall you worship, and to him shall you do sacrifice. And the statutes and the ordinances and the law and the commandment which he wrote for you, ye shall observe to do forever, and ye shall not fear other gods. Now, statutes, that's laws or regulations expressed in a document. An ordinance is a decree or command to be observed in an established ceremony. A law is rules for conduct. A commandment is orders given with authority. And you got all that in the Word of God, and it's just threw out the window when you get into this shape. And you fear other gods. And the covenant that I have made with you, ye shall not forget. Neither shall you fear other gods. They forgot the covenant. They forgot the agreement that they made with him. But the Lord your God ye shall fear, and he shall deliver you out of the hand of your enemies. You see, instead of being turned over into the hand of the enemy, instead of being delivered unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, fear God. Howbeit they did not hearken, but they did after the former manner. Sometimes the old way is not better. If the old path crosses the Bible path, mark it out. Don't go that path. So these nations feared the Lord and served their graven images. And that's the Lord being sarcastic. And could also be, they got the profession that they fear God, yet they're serving the graven images, both their children and their children's children, as their fathers. So do they unto this day. You see, they should have trained up their child in the way they should go, as it says in Proverbs 22:6, but they don't. You see, knowing God, they know God. Maybe they know God, they fear the Lord, but knowing God and obeying God, two different things. They do after the former manner. Sometimes the old way isn't better. But what you've seen here is the demise of Israel. The demise of the kingdom of Israel. And Hoshea, this guy was their last king here. Hoshea, 19th king of Israel. His name means to save. Didn't do much of that. He served 9 years. Spiritual state is evil. Father's name, Elah. Prophet, Amos. He's known for being Israel's last king and on the throne when they are taken captive.